Good evening. It's the 15th of March 2013, 6 days after Uhuru Kenyatta was declared Kenya's fourth president and barely 24 hours to the deadline of submitting any petition to challenge this declaration. I'm Betty Callow coming to you live from our news center here in Nairobi. Tonight we will tell you why the Code Coalition petition at the Supreme Court did not take off as widely expected and give you the opinion pollsters take on the just concluded elections. From the counties, our reporter Nyeri caught up with a man from Nyeri who says that for him to live in peace and harmony, his wife should be imprisoned for life. But first, a look at the highlights.
Having secured the assurance that the registry of the Supreme Court will be open tomorrow.
Tomorrow or never, deadline for the court petition looms.
Plain reading of the Constitution, those offices, the holders of those offices all served their terms up to the 4th of March.
On collision course, AG and CIC differ over cabinet's existence. What the court team will be up to tomorrow at the Supreme Court.
In Uhuru's 20 counties, but only 84% in Raila's 20 counties, keeping in mind 5 were in both, the actual vote gap between them disappears.
Numbers versus turnout, post-election opinion polls released.
Good evening and welcome to the program. We start with news just reaching us as riots have erupted at the Kenyatta University main campus along Thika Road after students discovered what is claimed to be an IEBC operation base at the University Business Center located on the underground floor, room 14. Well, it is alleged that a group of people arrived at the university this morning and occupied the room, putting up a sign out of bounds before starting to undertake an unclear operation involving ballot boxes, some of which were sealed while others had broken seals. Well, students got wind of the suspicious activities this afternoon and descended on the underground floor room demanding an explanation on the activities, which was not forthcoming. Well, those involved locked themselves up in the room fearing for their lives. Eventually, students broke into the room and apprehended them as the entire campus degenerated into chaos. The IEBC chairman has this evening confirmed that the base wasn't actually a tallying center and the materials had been left behind when the rest of the electoral materials were taken to Bomas. Investigations have been instituted and the IEBC will be making further comments after getting more information from the regional coordinators. We will bring you the details of that developing story as soon as we get them. Now, exactly 1 week after Jubilee's Uhuru Kenyatta was declared the winner of the presidential ballot, rivals CORD will be moving to the Supreme Court to challenge the results. CORD were meant to have filed the petition today but failed to do so, citing another case that has been filed at the Supreme Court as the reason. Now, the other case is challenging the validity of computing rejected votes in the final presidential tally. Samogina reports on the looming Supreme Court battle that threatens Jubilee's occupation of State House.
The Code Coalition has once again shelved filing the election petition challenging the presidential results. The coalition had promised to file the petition at the Supreme Court by Friday, but says the move of postponing the election petition is strategic as their petition is quite ready.
All the documentation had been prepared and affidavits ready for filing.
The move informed by another petition at the Supreme Court challenging IEBC's decision of computing rejected votes in the final presidential tally. In shelving its petition, CORD claimed it wants the election petition to be distinct from other cases at the Supreme Court.
It is our wish that our petition is not mixed up with any other petition that is being filed by other entities. We want the public to know distinctly what are our grounds for filing this petition.
The coalition is now poised to file the petition on the deadline day legally required for submitting presidential election petitions. The Constitution explicitly stipulates that in a contested election, a petitioner has 7 days within which to file the petition. Code says they have the assurance of the Chief Justice's office and the Supreme Court's registry on the modalities of depositing the petition on Saturday.
The registry of the Supreme Court will be open tomorrow for any other petitions that may be filed after today. We reached the conclusion that we would file our petition tomorrow.
Nonetheless, the coalition says despite the High Court compelling the IEBC to produce crucial documents to aid in consolidating their case, IEBC is yet to fully comply, but CORD says it will soldier on in search of a court redress. CORD has lined up 10 lawyers, with the lead counsel being George Oraro, while Makueni Senate-elect Mutula Kilonzo, Siaya Senate-elect James Orengo providing legal consultancy.
I think we have received Form 36 and 34, but we were not able to get Form 35. We were promised that they may be available today.
CORD has been quite critical on President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, William Ruto, transacting official duties before the court petition challenging their election has been dispensed. Samogi, KTN.
Now, the filing of the petition was postponed today, but tomorrow is the deadline, and CORD must file it, shifting the attention from the coalition to the Supreme Court. KTN Sophia Wanuna now takes us through the process of filing a petition at the highest court in the country.
The Supreme Court. Of course, we were expecting the CORD team to come here and file their petition. They did not. We saw that press conference that was covered by Sam Ogena giving their reasons. They chose strategically to hand in their petition tomorrow. So now we're inside the Supreme Court buildings, and I'm now going to take you to the registry. It is also here that tomorrow the CORD team will be bringing in their petition, the Supreme Court registry. And inside this registry there are various counters where they will be bringing in their documents. There's a receiving documents counter, there is a verification counter, as well as a fee assessment, as well as other counters around this registry. I'm now joined by Anne Asuga. She is Deputy Registrar here at the Supreme Court. Thank you very much for joining us. So my first question to you is, what are the requisite documents for a presidential petition?
Thank you very much for having me. Welcome to the Supreme Court Registry. When we receive the petition from the petitioners, it must conform to certain guidelines set out by the Supreme Court Presidential Petition Election Rules. And the petition must come in 8 copies, bound. It must contain an affidavit signed by the people petitioning. And if there are more than one petitioners, they may authorize one person to swear their affidavit on their behalf. The petition must also be numbered consecutively, and it must be signed by the petitioners themselves or their duly appointed advocates.
Okay.
Yes.
I've seen a fee counter as well. There's a cashier counter. Is there some payment they're making?
Yes, there are some payments that they are making. We incur costs, and they incur costs. To file a petition in the Supreme Court, a presidential election petition, you need to have filing fees of 500,000 shillings, and you must deposit security for costs of 1,000,000 shillings. On top of that, there are miscellaneous expenses for annexures that you put to your affidavit, so you must pay for those as well.
All right, so they come here and they file their petition. Between that time and when the judges in the Supreme Court begin hearing that petition, what happens?
Once the petition is filed, the petitioner, after we receive and clear it and stamp it, has 3 days to file to serve the respondents. The respondents are the people who are being sued. And once the respondent receives the petition from the petitioner, they are supposed to respond within 3 days. And if they're not going to they're not opposing the petition, they file a notice of no opposition to the petition within the same timeline, 3 days. After the 3 days the respondent has filed, the registrar is supposed to notify the Kenyan public and through the Kenya Gazette within 3 days of filing. The registrar must also notify the IEBC that a petition has been filed, and must also circulate the petition through the media of wide circulation. On the 9th day after filing, the registrar sends out notices of what we call a pre-trial conference. This is just a sitting where the parties agree on issues for determination by the court, and they just want to shorten the period and agree this is what we are going to discuss, or this is what we are going to, this is what is going to trial. So iron out issues during the pre-trial conference. That is done on the 9th day after the filing of the petition.
All right, so there is a pre-trial conference you've mentioned there, but in the event that the respondents delays in terms of responding, of course, after they've been served by the petitioners, what happens?
Usually in normal cases, respondents would file for extension of time. But remember, the 14 days are constitutional timelines. They're almost non-negotiable. But a matter of extension or not would be a matter for the court to determine.
Thank you very much, Anna Suga. We appreciate your time and your comments on these very important questions. We have been talking to Anna Suga. She's the Deputy Registrar here at the Supreme Court, taking us through the timelines, what we expect after a petition is filed, and also what exactly happens here and the requisite documents for a presidential petition. So that is done. This is where we'll all be happening tomorrow. The court team has said that it will be coming here. We will wait to see about that. But now it's really about after the judges, the Supreme Court judges led by the President of the Supreme Court and Chief Justice Willie Mutunga hear that petition. There's that 14-day deadline by which they must determine the petition. Then it's all about where and how the scales of justice will tilt.
Thank you very much, Sophia Wanuna, for that piece. Away from the courts now, Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai is on a collision course with the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution over the continued existence of the current cabinet, while the Commission Chairman Charles Nyachai claims that Prime Minister Raila Odinga, Vice President Kalonzo Musyoka and cabinet ministers are in office illegally. The AG overruled Nyachai, saying cabinet is constitutionally in place until the next government takes over. And as Samogina reports, Nyachai's interpretation of the Constitution is bound to create a power vacuum in the country.
The AG's rebuttal came hot on the heels of Nyachai's statement on the sidelines of President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta's meeting with all the constitutional bodies. At the meeting, Uhuru and his deputy William Ruto pledged to work with all the independent constitutional commissions to ensure the full implementation of the Constitution.
We are open, we are ready to work together with yourselves, and we look forward to that opportunity. And like I said, let it be in the spirit of all of us recognizing that we each have mandates to fulfill, but all those mandates at the end of the day are supposed to be for the betterment of the people of the Republic of Kenya.
Though united in briefing the President-elect on the status of their commissions and departments, the Attorney General has sharply differed with the CIC over the legality of the Prime Minister, Vice President and Cabinet Ministers' stay in office. The CIC Chairman Charles Nyachai had cited the existence of Raila Odinga as Prime Minister, Kalonzo Musyoka as the Vice President and several cabinet position holders as an illegality given the election of a new President-elect.
They will continue in office until the first general elections under the Constitution. Now, the first general elections under the Constitution, of course, were on the 4th of March. So on a plain reading of the Constitution, those offices, the holders of those offices all served their terms up to the 4th of March.
But the government chief legal advisor, in a letter to the head of civil service, Francis Kimemia, says the Prime Minister, Vice President and Cabinet Ministers are firmly and legally in office in accordance to the National Accord and Reconciliation Act of 2008. The AG stated that Cabinet will continue being in office until the coming into force of the new government, warning that a power vacuum is imminent if Cabinet relinquish their position. The Attorney General stated that the election period does not end at balloting and subsequent declaration of President-elect, but will be completed upon gazettement of all elected leaders and their swearing in. Samogina, KTN.
Higher voter turnout in Jubilee's strongholds may have given President-elect Uhuru Kenyatta an advantage over Raila Odinga in the just concluded general election, while a poll released by research firm Ipsos Synovate indicates that although Raila had a higher number of registered voters in his top 20 counties, only 84% of these voters turned up to vote against the 88% who turned out to vote in Uhuru's top counties. This factor, together with the votes of those who switched their preferred candidate in the last few days, is believed to have turned the tide for Uhuru Kenyatta. Wilkista Nyabwa has the details on the pollsters' stake on the March 4th election.
Unscientific, compromised, and unreliable.
The last opinion poll released by research firm Ipsos Synovate 2 weeks before the elections gave the Jubilee flag bearer a slight lead over rival the Coalition for Reforms and Democracy Raila Odinga. However, when the elections came, Jubilee presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta would garner just over 50% of the votes to emerge the winner, while Raila Odinga garnered 43.3%, begging the question, did the polls lie? Pollsters had identified top 20 counties that would provide essential vote baskets for both sides. Raila's top 20 counties, which included Kisumu, Kakamega and Mombasa, yielded over 8.5 million registered voters, a 300,000 person advantage over Jubilee's 8.1 million registered voters in its top 20 counties, which included Kiambu, Murang'a and Elgeyo Marakwet. However, not all of the registered voters in these counties would turn out to vote.
In Raila's list of the 20 counties where he did best, he actually had more registered voters than Uhuru did. About 350,000. However, because of the differential turnout average in these 20 counties, where it was 88% in Uhuru's 20 counties, but only 84% in Raila's 20 counties, keeping in mind 5 were in both, the actual vote gap between them disappears.
Uhuru went on to win 75% of the votes cast in his top 20 counties, while Raila won just 63% in his top counties. But was the turnout enough to turn the tide? Together, the 6 minor presidential candidates, namely Peter Kenneth, Mohamed Abdubadida, Musalia Mudavadi, Paul Muite, Martha Karua and James Ole Kiapi, received an 8% approval rating in the February poll. When it came to the elections, the IEBC results gave them only 5.64%, a loss of over 2.5%. More than half of these voters are believed to have changed their minds and decided to vote for Uhuru Kenyatta instead, once they realized that their preferred candidates stood little chance. Campaign activity in the last 2 weeks is also reported to have benefited Jubilee more than any other coalition.
So, on the basis of an assumption, which I don't believe is true, but just on an assumption that all the undecided in our vote went to Uhuru Kenyatta, 2%, and all of the loss from these other 3 minor candidates also went to Uhuru Kenyatta, that would have given him between 4 and 5 extra percent, taking him from the 44.8% that we gave him to around 49%.
Researchers now say it is likely that it came down to voter registration, voter turnout and civic education in the matter of rejected and spoiled votes. Pollsters say it came down to not just who supported which candidate, but how many of each candidate's supporters came out to vote. Wilkista Nyabwa, KTN in Nairobi.
Thank you, Wilkista. We now want to continue that conversation, and in studio I'm now joined by Victor Rateng, who's the project manager for public opinion polls. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Betty.
All right, just to get some information from what we've had from Wilkista's story, were your opinion polls in the run-up to the elections far from the reality of what exactly happened on election day?
Okay, Betty, first of all, I would like to state that the key assumption here is that the IEBC figures of the results given to us by the IEBC are actually accurate. And you are aware that there is a petition that is being filed tomorrow by the CORD coalition. One was filed today by the Jubilee coalition. One is seeking to interpret the figures on rejected votes, while the other one is citing malpractices. So what we have done as an institution that has been doing polling, we looked at the figures that were released by the IEBC vis-a-vis what the poll that we released on 22nd of February. So going by that, if there is no contention, then what we're going to find is that the voter turnout actually explains the difference between the poll that we released and the actual outcome. Because what we see is that there is 5.25% margin between Uhuru and Raila, according to the IEBC, vis-a-vis the poll that we released. So our polls are actually accurate. Now the second thing is that our polls did not actually explain the intended voter behavior on 4th March, but we tried to talk to Kenyans, and they could explain to us or tell us their intentions. So not entirely a prediction that this is actually what is going to happen.
Do you think that the Kenyans, the people who you interviewed in the opinion polls, probably did not project the truth of who they would vote for come March 4th?
I would say they did express themselves as they would on that particular time. But you see, things could have changed. The poll we released was carried out several days to the general election. Remember, after the release of that poll, we had the presidential debate. After the release of that poll, we had several days of campaign up to the last weekend. So many things could have happened between the time we did the last poll and the time people voted. Also, remember that there were several other candidates who may have lost, the so-called less popular or smaller candidates, who may have lost their votes to Uhuru or Raila.
How do you explain that? Or across the campaigning period, you know, these voters decided that they will vote for this other six candidates, but on election day they decided to change their minds the last minute. Do you think that had a really big impact on what we've seen?
Well, less than a quarter of that can be explained by that margin, so really not so much, but maybe changing from a really less popular or a less popular candidate to somebody who is more popular or who has a higher chance of winning. There's a possibility of that. Yeah, but not captured by this analysis.
All right, not this analysis. All right, let's look at some figures here. CORD had 8.5 million voters in their top 20 candidates. These are figures that from Ipsos Synovate. Also, Jubilee had 8.1 million voters in their top 20 candidates. Comparing the two figures, we have a 300,000 vote difference between CORD and Jubilee. Would you attribute that the fact that probably CORD did not get this 300 votes to low voter turnout?
What there is that the top 20 vote baskets you're talking about is where Uhuru had the most votes out of the 47 counties. So you find that Uhuru has about 8 million and Raila has about 8 million. So when you look at the voter turnout in the top 20 vote baskets for each of them, the voter turnout in Uhuru's stronghold is much higher than Raila's stronghold. Okay. So that explains one thing, that going by the IEBC figures as we have them, or the results, that if CORD lost to Uhuru or Jubilee, then it is because the voter turnout. That is what the analysis is about.
All right. Looking at the other positions, the senator, the governors, you also did an opinion poll for all these seats in the different counties. Do you think your predictions were spot on?
Absolutely.
For every county? For
the 7 counties, Nairobi, Mombasa, Machakos, Nakuru, Kisumu, Kakamega, we got it right for the position of governor and senator. Now, for Nakuru County and Kakamega County, we missed out because at the time of polling, 54% and 68% for Nakuru and Kakamega counties respectively, most of the people indicated they were uncertain of whom they would vote for as women's representative. But if you look at Nairobi, we predicted a win for Kidero. If you go to Mombasa County, we predicted a win for Joho. If you go to Nakuru, it was going to be Kinuthia, which is the case. Kisumu, it would be Ranguma, which happened to be. Kakamega, it would be Oparanya, and that came to pass. And then if you go to Machakos, we had said it would be Dr. Alfred Mutua, and that came to pass. So
looking at the other counties, probably that the predictions were not as exactly what took place on March 4th. Was it again the bandwagon effect, where you go to the ballot and you take the person who's probably the most popular candidate?
We don't have any opinion poll to validate that, and so it would be wrong for me to give an opinion that is based on or that is not factual. So really, I'm not so sure about that question. Yeah.
All right. And maybe finally, the opinion polls that you conducted, did you ever consider the likelihood of having the rejected votes and the spoiled votes in the opinion polls that you conducted?
Not entirely, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that had probably a major effect on...
Well, if you look at it, 100,000 votes were rejected. 100,000 votes, just about 100,000. Yes. Well, that's a big number, because if suppose they were Raila's votes, then it means that would force a runoff. Okay. And suppose they were Uhuru's votes, then it means it wouldn't be 50.07, it would be 51% probably, or 50.1. Right. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for your time and, of course, for your insights on that particular poll that you've conducted.
Thank you very much, Betty.
Okay. Well, moving on, the High Court today threw out a case challenging academic credentials of Mombasa Governor-elect Hassan Joho and his deputy Hazel Katana. Justice Isaac Lenaola ruled that the two are holders of valid degrees and fit to run for office of governor. But as Ferdinand Omondi reports, Joho is not yet out of the woods, with two other cases still pending.
Hassan Joho can now breathe easy after the High Court ruled that he does hold a valid university degree worthy of his position as governor of Mombasa. A voter had moved to court in January to have him blocked from contesting the seat on grounds that his academic qualifications were dubious. Janet Ndago said Joho and his deputy Hazel Katana were not holders of valid degrees as provided for by the Constitution to run for this office. Governor na deputy yake. She also claimed the two used unorthodox and fraudulent means to obtain their certificates, which they presented to IEBC for approval. But Justice Isaac Lenaola has now ruled that both Joho and Katana are holders of valid degrees from recognized universities and therefore fit to hold the offices they were elected to. Justice Lenaola dismissed the case and also ordered Janet Ndago to meet the costs of the suit. While the storm over Joho's academic qualifications is over, he has to keep his champagne on ice. His political nemesis Suleiman Shahban, who lost the gubernatorial race, has gone to court to challenge his election on grounds of electoral fraud. A voter in Mombasa has also filed a similar case against Joho. In the meantime, the governor-elect has been going about his business as the CEO of Mombasa. On Tuesday, he declared war on drug trafficking. And 2 days later, police raided Mwembe Tayari Market and flushed out 38 suspects. The building has been an eyesore and haven for criminals in Mombasa.
Those areas, including Magodoroni and Magodown, they have to go. As security, we are appealing to the concerned authority to either renovate this building or demolish it altogether.
It appears someone has been listening. Today, a contractor moved into Mwembe Tayari Market and told KTN his mission was to demolish the building which caught fire 10 years ago.
La kwanza na mwenyewe watakana kujenga upya na mjengo mpya. Pia tunatakana kuondosha na walanguzi wa madawa hapa.
The demolition is set to last 3 months, after which the contractor expects an ultra-modern shopping complex to be put up at the same location. This market has been on the spot the whole week, and it appears that finally a decision has been made. The eyesore is coming down, and hopefully in its place will be a landmark. Ferdinand Omondi, KTN, Mwembe Tayari Market, Mombasa.
Well, Nairobi Governor-elect Dr. Evans Kidero has asked the court to dismiss an election petition filed against him on grounds that it lacks merit. Kidero, through his lawyer, Professor Tom Ojienda, told the court that the suit filed by his key competitor in the Nairobi gubernatorial race, former Embakasi MP Ferdinand Waititu, was premature. Ojienda cited Section 76 of the Elections Act that provides that the election petition should be filed within 28 days after the date of publication of the results of the election in the Gazette. Waititu moved to court to seek orders to stop Kidero's gazettement, saying the election of Nairobi governor was marred with numerous irregularities and the crucial Form 36 validating the elections had not been signed. Well, meanwhile, Siaya County Governor runner-up William Odol has filed a petition challenging the results announced by IEBC. Odol, who vied for the post of governor through an APK ticket, filed the suit at the Kisumu High Court today to compel the IEBC and Safaricom Limited to avail data that was used to announce the results. Odol claims that he won the election, adding that the poll was marred by irregularities. Results released by IEBC showed that the governor-elect of Siaya County, Amos Resanga, won with 142,901 against Odol's 133,903 votes. Well, moving on, the government has admitted that it is facing serious challenges in controlling hate speech on social media platforms. The Permanent Secretary for Information and Communication, Dr. Bitange Ndemo, says some politicians and members of the civil society were taking advantage of the scenario and using social media to spread propaganda and hate speech. However, Ndemo says the government will not use unorthodox means to block the internet, but has encouraged internet service providers to ensure each internet user has an internet protocol address to help curb cybercrime. Ndemo at the same time said the government would not expel or gag foreign journalists, but urged foreign media to exercise responsibility in their reporting.
In order to check spread of hate messages through mobile phones, the government last year directed all mobile subscribers to be registered, failing which their lines will be blocked. And as the government released its scorecard, it would appear it gave short attention span to the internet.
Our attempts this time to contain hate messaging succeeded, but we underestimated the power of social media.
Ndemo acknowledges the use of social media through Facebook and Twitter is now becoming a major source of disseminating hate speech and propaganda. This new development is making the government worried.
We did not think that social media would be a problem that it is today. And it has gotten worse and worse, and it's attacking practically everybody in government, including the international journalists who are being threatened because they have not covered the story in the direction that pleases political party.
The government is scratching its head as it seeks to control hate mongers abusing the internet.
We are encouraging ISPs to ensure that every gadget in this country has a public IP address, because if you look at the Western world, when they look around to see who is sending or who is propagating the message of child pornography, that is what they use to arrest, and it takes them a very short time.
The government says the foreign media was free to report on Kenya after journalists have been accredited by the Department of Information. Foreign journalists were, however, urged to report responsibly.
I had the little misfortune of dealing with my sister Nima from CNN, and we had a very, very interesting discussion and a lovely cup of tea. But the next thing I knew, I was being accused of having arrested a journalist.
The Ministry of Information denied there were any rifts between it and the Media Council of Kenya with regard to issuance of licenses to foreign journalists.
For international journalists, we said that the government would continue to do the accreditation through the Department of Information. This is simply because there are other processes that go on when the accreditation is being done. Things like security check must be done, because also immigration has to verify with the Department of Information before they issue the work permits or passes in the country.
Patrick Amimo, KTN.
Well, you are watching KTN Prime, and just ahead, Nyeri's battered man wants wife locked up for life. Well, stay with us. Machakos County Senator-elect Johnston Muthama has expressed fears over his life, attributing it to his political stand. Muthama was instrumental in bringing Wiper and ODM together and accord, and has been the most vocal in the coalition's dispute of the presidential election results. The Machakos senator claims that there are strange vehicles trailing his movements within Nairobi. Last evening, Muthama recorded a statement with the police over the alleged incitement at Accord's Thanksgiving rally in Kibera on Tuesday. Muthama has refuted the allegations.
But the issue here, I think, is not of what I said, but it's a way of intimidating me because of my political stand. Because I've seen emissaries being sent to me to approach me and make me change my mind and my political stand and recognize the victory of Uhuru, Kenyatta and William Ruto. And what I said is this: I stood for the cause of Kenyans. I'm not looking for power. I'm not looking for position. I'm not looking for money. I'm not looking for favors. I stood for the cause of Kenyans. I will continue standing for the cause of Kenyans and defend the rights of Kenyans. And I'm not about to be swayed away. So intimidation will not take anybody anywhere. Threats will not make me change my position.
A countrywide campaign to support the petition to be filed by the Code Coalition tomorrow at the Supreme Court has been launched. The initiative, dubbed Democracy on Trial campaign, will include prayer vigils in various regions across the country, as well as campaigns on social media platforms. According to Mbeta MP-elect Millie Odhiambo, the multifaceted campaign will run for the entire duration of the Supreme Court case. Participants have been urged to wear white t-shirts, white armbands or white lapel pin ribbons. The campaign calls for peace and unity across ethnic and political divides.
The White Ribbon social media campaign that is calling for peace and unity across the ethnic and political divide on Twitter, Facebook and social media blogs, even as we all wait for the Supreme Court decision. This initiative will specifically speak against the vitriol and hatred being spewed on social media based on ethnic and or political differences, with a view to reconcile the country pre and post the Supreme Court decision.
Now, one of the men in Nyeri County who is remembered for highlighting the plight of battered husbands is an unhappy man after the Mukurweini law courts decided to acquit his wife for lack of evidence. 40-year-old Simon Kiguta claimed that his wife had attacked him with a panga, causing grievous body harm sometime last year. She was later arrested by police led by Nyeri South's OCPD Adiel Anyange, but was last month acquitted by the courts. Kiguta now wants the case retried and will be appealing the decision to free his wife. KTN's Carol Nyeri has that story.
Does this face jog your memory? A face that was splashed across television screens and newspapers early last year. Meet Simon Kiguta again. This 40-year-old man who hails from Mukurweini in Nyeri County claimed that his wife attacked him with a panga as soon as he got into bed, alleging that the said wife then proceeded to slash his face severally, leading to his hospitalization at the Nyeri Provincial General Hospital. Fast forward to almost a year later, we visit him at his Mukurweini home, and Kiguta is one unhappy man. Reason being that his wife was acquitted last month by the Mukurweini law courts after the court found her not guilty.
Nilishido hiyo kesi vile ilienda, ama nikachido ama kuna kuwaga na serikali. Hiyo mambo ilinishida sana. Sasa hata silaragi nikifikiria hiyo mambo.
His is a heavy heart, disbelief that the court set her free. Many other times he has wanted to take matters into his own hands but restrained himself, he says.
Akili zikaniambia nimuue, nikaona hapana, juu kuna sheria, lakini nashindwa hiyo sheria ni sheria gani? Juu mimi niko hapa na mama akawachiliwa.
Apparently the evidence presented in court was not admissible, but he says he will appeal against the ruling. Sentiments echoed by Maendeleo ya Wanaume's chairperson Derito Njoka, who says the case must be retried.
Walisema mambo ya panga, ate damu ya panga na damu ya mattress na sheet ate hailingani, ate damu ya panga inaonekana ni ya mwanaume na hii ingine ni yangu. Sasa nikashindwa ni mwanaume gani mwingine sipokuwa mimi, na panga nilitoa kwangu.
Tungeuliza serikali kwanza, hii serikali mpya introduce gender courts. Ya pili tungesema vizuri ni kwamba kesi kama hii ya Kiguta inaonesha wazi kwamba maswala ya wanaume haizingatiwi vizuri.
Kiguta, however, tells us that he has not lost faith in the institution of marriage, and he will sooner rather than later find a lady to share the rest of his life with, despite the upheavals he has faced in his former marriage.
Siwezi nikakwambia nitaoa nini, juu hata mimi sijui, lakini nitakuja kuoa.
Carol Nderi for KTN in Mokoroine, Nyeri County.
Now, when we come to the court strongholds, for 16 counties that we predicted would be strongholds for court, we see an interesting difference in the right-hand column on the range gap between the two, where we find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those strongholds where the gap between Raila and his nearest challenger, that is Uhuru, was less than 50%.
The Commission released its monthly fuel caps. Kenyans have registered their disappointment with the 4 shillings and 12 cents increase in petrol prices. Those interviewed by KTN Business say the new fuel prices will hurt their home budget. The now adjustment in fuel prices is also expected to hurt farming in most parts of the country as farmers try to prepare for the planting season. KTN's Philip Kitang has the details.
The ERC on Thursday increased retail fuel prices for petrol, diesel and kerosene after the cost of crude oil rose marginally in the international markets. With Kenya's economy largely dependent on diesel for transport, power production and agriculture, and kerosene used in many homes for lighting and cooking, the new fuel prices are expected to hurt economic growth and strain the budgets of the common mwananchi. The prices of a barrel of imported crude oil edged higher to 1.17% to $112.05 in January. In a statement, the regulator added that the Kenyan shillings weakened by 1.17% in that period to 87.01 shillings against the dollar, putting further pressure on oil imports costs. This new move by ERC follows an attempt by the Kenya Power to triple its tariffs over the next 3 years, a proposal that has been waiting approval by ERC. If Kenya Power proposal had been approved, the new prices would have had a significant impact on the rate of inflation in the country. The proposal would have seen domestic retail tariffs rise by 150% to 300 shillings over the 3 years, from the current 120 shillings per month. The new fuel prices are expected to cause a ripple effect on price increases by manufacturers and the transport sector.
torturous times for motorists in Kenya. Moving on, the shilling slid marginally ahead of the weekend, ending the rally during the week that saw the local unit rise to its strongest in more than 4 months as companies demanded dollars on resuming operations. The Kenya shilling dropped as much as 0.6% to 85 shillings and 91 cents to the dollar and was trading 0.2% lower at 85 shillings and 58 cents. The weakest level in a week. Now, according to the currency traders, the drop was expected as normal business operations resumed following a week of election-related activities that had stalled operations. The Central Bank of Kenya has also been aggressive in trying to rein the exchange fluctuations, seemingly ready to jump into the market anytime the shilling crossed the 86 shilling mark against the dollar. This despite Treasury insisting that it did not have an optimal trading level for the shilling. During trading, CBK offered 15 billion shillings worth of bids for 7-day repurchase agreements and 14-day term auction deposits. CBK normally uses the repos to reduce money supply and support the shilling, while traders expect to see some major activity in the dollar-shilling pairing next week as companies begin to fulfill their end-month obligations. And finally, in business, listed company Liberty Kenya Holdings Limited announced a consolidated pre-tax profit of 1.2 billion shillings, up 19% from the 1 billion shillings a year earlier. The holding company for CFC Life Insurance and Heritage Insurance saw gross earned premium revenue up 9% to 6.9 billion shillings, while consolidated premium revenue grew from 6.4 billion shillings to 7.5 billion shillings, representing a 16% jump. Net insurance benefits and claims during the period grew to 3.1 billion shillings. From an individual company performance perspective, Heritage's net profit before tax increased from 589 million shillings, largely due to better underwriting practices and disciplines in growing the business. The business 2012 saw improvement in Heritage's underwriting performance, particularly in the medical and motor classes of businesses. And that's it for business. Sadiq Shaban is coming up next with the sport. Stay tuned.
Good evening and welcome to KTN Sports. My name is Sadiq Shaban. We start with the latest news coming in from Egypt, where ENPPI Club, also known as Engineering for the Petroleum and Process Industry Club, whipped Gor Mahia 3-0 in the first round of the CAF Continental Championship match that was played behind closed doors in CAF Confederation Cup. That was played this evening in Cairo. Amri Zaki scored a double as Rami Zabari added a third goal, and Gor Mahia will now need 4 clear goals in the second leg in 2 weeks' time here in Nairobi if they must avoid the curse of getting eliminated in the first round. And staying with the Continental Championships, Africa champions and the Egyptian giants rather, Al Ahly, have warned Tusker not to expect an easy game tomorrow in their CAF Champions League tie at the Nyayo National Stadium. The Egyptians held their final training session this evening at the Nyayo National Stadium.
Al Ahly shifted their training base from the well-tended Kenya School of Military Studies to the unfinished grounds of the Nyayo National Stadium, the venue of their CAF Champions League Continental first leg encounter. The Egyptian Giants head coach Hossam El Badri, while acknowledging that the instability has cost Egypt a lot in footballing terms, feels his charges will be ready to bottle the Brewers. if the experience in continental championships is anything to go by.
We faced the same problem last year and we did it as a championship.
The side rested its key players in a league match against ANP, Gor Mahia's opponents in the CAF Confederations, to ensure they are ready for the Kenyan assignment.
We have a long time in Africa and we used to face the same weather, so we hope the weather tomorrow to be good, and we're expecting it to be good, and we will, under any circumstances, we will play and we will concentrate in the game. Yeah.
Al Ahly are the African champions after winning the 2012 edition of the CAF Champions League and the CAF Super Cup, where they faced Confederations Cup champions Leopards FC from Congo. Tusker coach Robert Matano knows the curse of the Kenyan clubs in continental championships. Tusker's only warm-up to the match was a 1-1 league match draw against Karuturi Sports, and Matano seemed to have borrowed a cue from El Badri by resting some of his key players.
Al Ahly to us is motivation, so we must work hard and play, and we are focused on that match. In fact, this one, to us, I thought, I knew that it's going to be difficult for us because the mind of the players are not to this match. They are focused ahead of this match. So also committing and working hard, running up and down, sometimes it's very difficult.
The Brewers will be making their 5th appearance in this tournament, their best results being a 1994 final loss to DC Motomapembe. The match kicks off at 4 at the Nyeri National Stadium. Reporting for KTN Sports today, I'm Hassan Juma.
Elsewhere, Kenya Cup rugby winners Menengai Oil Nakuru RFC have vowed to march into the semi-finals of the Enterprise Cup when they host Lunchburg Queens in the quarter-finals of the match tomorrow at the Nakuru Athletics Club. 6 more teams will be in action tomorrow.
The Kenya Cup winners will be at home against the immediate former champions Lunchburg Queens in what is expected to be a mouth-watering fixture. A loss on Saturday marks the end of the season for one of these two sides, while Menengai Oil Nakuru RFC will also be out to avenge for their 31-13 Kenya Cup loss to Queens on Saturday, 2nd February here in Nairobi.
We really want to try and chase the Enterprise Cup. Also, just make sure the momentum we built from winning the Kenya Cup is maintained.
The quest for a silverware will also be a motivating factor for both sides, but with the great Rift Valley Tender side rugby looming, the hosts know they must give a good account of themselves at home.
All our eyes are on our fixture against Kenya Harlequins on this weekend. Once we get the result we are looking for, then it shifts to the semi-finals. We will have a week of preparation and focusing on the Tender side if and when we get past the semi-finals.
In other Enterprise Cup fixtures, Strathmore Leos will be at home against Total Nondis, while Kenya Commercial Bank will be at the Ruaraka Den against visiting Homeboys RFC. Mwamba and Impala will play in another match at the University of Nairobi grounds.
Weather forecast brought to you by Motin Doom Power Guard.
The ultimate cockroach killer.
And that's where we wind up this edition of KTN Prime. But just before we leave, news just in indicates that Kenyatta University has issued a statement on the latest developments at the institution and have clarified that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission had indeed hired facilities at Kenyatta University for use during the electioneering period. Vice Chancellor Olive Mugenda says the room in question had been hired by the IEBC until the 22nd of March 2013. The IEBC, through its PR manager Tabitha Mutemi, has also reacted to what she terms as alarming news of their officers being confronted at Kenyatta University. Well, she says that there is nothing unusual with the presence of the IEBC returning officers in KU, which was a tallying center. The materials were well secured for retrieval to the warehouse in Kasarani. Well, that's the news update there from the Kenyatta University. We will, of course, keep you informed with anything that may occur, as this is a developing story. Thank you so much for watching this edition of KTN Prime. My name is Betty Callow. Do have yourself a lovely evening.